Okay, so this video is going to be about the way that I approach sculpting hair, and some things that I learned in this last sculpt that I was working on, especially on how to some good ways to approach like fur lining to like clothes and stuff. So this is a sculpt that I have that I'm going to be demoing on, and so it's mostly about how I got this hair, and then also like this kind of fake fur lining, and just got some more on the pant cuffs here. So the hair first, because that's a little more straightforward. So I actually started with these, what I call hair bananas, and it's just a bunch of it's just some low poly geo of like a curved let me autogroup these guys. Just like this single, banana shape. I call them that because that's kind of what they look like. And so what I will do with these is, well, first get your, make sure you have your reference ready, or if I'm doing an original character, or if I'm doing like a game character or something that already has artwork for it, then I will reference that. And sometimes I'll do extra drawings just so that if the hair is a little vague in the concept art, sometimes you're just going to need to, it helps me to do a drawing on top of it to really nail down exactly what the hair shapes are going to be and where they're going to be. For this one, I was a little more loose with it, and I think it actually took me longer because of that, but you're gonna just like lay out the shapes. And I knew that I wanted, for example, that I wanted to be kind of going to the left a little bit, and some of these shapes that I knew I wanted a big shape in the middle here, and at least some over here, and then this one I was pretty confident about wanting that, breaking the silhouette there. Same with the back here, I knew that I wanted some longer pieces. So with that in mind, you're going to follow your concept art. What I will do here is just get my move brush. I actually like to use this snake hook to move things around. In every circumstance, more or less. I don't really like the move brush that much personally. And auto group your stuff, and then you're just gonna Control-Shift-Click and just go through and move the hair where you want it. This takes a while, I will be honest, but it's really the best way that I've found to get what you want. And if you want to shape several pieces at once, but not all of them, then you can just Control-Shift-Click your geo, and then click it again, and that'll go into I don't know, I guess like subtraction type mode, or exclusion, I guess. And then you can Control-Shift-Click extra pieces to hide those as well. So let's say I want these to go down quite a bit, flatten it out or something. And you might and then if you Control-Shift-Click empty area, then you'll get all of them back. And it's probably not a bad idea to shape all of them to some extent together. Let's do something like this maybe, just to kind of fit them on the head a little better before you start doing a little more tweaking. And then what you can do is also using transpose tools to your advantage here. Let's say rotate this a little. You can snap the transform widget if you hold Alt and just click on a point. And once you get used to the controls, it actually does go pretty quick. Oh, that's the other thing. If you're in move mode or some kind of transfer mode, instead, if you're in the brush mode or edit mode, draw mode, whatever it's called, if you control, let me clear that mask. If you control click, then you get this result. If you're in move mode, then if you control click, this is what you'll get. It'll mask out the other pieces of geo. So you can use that if you like that better. If you want to see the piece in the context of the other hair pieces, that can also be helpful. It's good to use both, or use all the tools that you have at your disposal, basically. So you would continue like that. Adjusting things as necessary. I'm just gonna fix up some of these pieces. So that's not great, but honestly it's pretty serviceable for what we started with. Pretending that this is how you want your hair to look. What I will do then is duplicate this, just so that I have the separate the subtool with all the separate groups, just so that I can keep that intact in case I screw up this part. And then I will dynamesh this. Actually, depending on what you want, you might want to subdivide them first. This is up to you. If you don't subdivide them and you dynamesh them like this, then you're gonna have to smooth out these edges here. Get a pencil here. So you're gonna end up with more subdivisions or more geo to work with, or faces to work with, but you're gonna end up with all these facets, and you're gonna have to smooth them out. And depending on how high you dynamesh that, it can actually start to work against you. So it might be easier to smooth out those, give it more subdivisions, and then dynamesh it. Just don't want a pretty high resolution. Wow, that didn't work. Lovely. I think I want this to not be at 0. Let me try that again. There we go. It's because these are this geo that I had. They're actually hollow, because I did that because it actually makes it a little bit easier to pinch those ends and get them nice and spiky. But you can do that afterwards too. And then from here, I would start to fill in some of these cracks, just so that it's not so even. And probably close up that hole as well with another good dynamesh. Turn off back face mask so that I can close this pretty easily. Dynamesh again. And now you're good to go. So just fill in some of these gaps. Maybe not all of them, depending, or you can fill them in and then kind of add them back later. So you see how, even though got a pretty dense mesh. You can still see kind of the facets of the way that the topology was before we dynameshed it. You can go, you can smooth this as well. It's probably one easy way to kind of get rid of that, but you're probably going to end up sculpting over all of it anyway, so maybe that's not necessary. That's your call. So I will go over this with clay buildup in order to fill up those gaps, and then also with polish, or what's the other one called? Trim, if you like that one, to just kind of flatten this out. You might want the hair pieces to be rounded that way. It depends on the look that you're going for. I find that it looks nice when they have some edges, just not. Not all the edges, and I hate how it posts that. I mean, we still have, it still has those subgroups, so that might be useful to not get rid of. You can still Control-Shift-Click on there in order to get a better look at some of these pieces, and get into some spots where it might otherwise be difficult to. I like polishing and smoothing. That looks kind of terrible, but still. And then, well, pretend that I've gone over all of it, and it looks a little better. Just demonstrating the general approach. So I fit this in. Something like that. Then what I will do is go back through with Cracksplash or Damn Standard, if that's what you have and you like that, and just kind of think about the flow of the hair. Make that a little smaller, I think, and just get in there some. I don't know, I guess some representation of like hair strands. Depending on the look you're going for, you might want more or less of this. If you're going for like a simpler look or cartoony, then you can have a bigger have a deeper divot there so that you have more of the pieces, or you can have like more smaller drawing of the strands there. So that's just kind of how I think about it and kind of how I approach it. Oftentimes I'll end up doing maybe several passes, or what you can do sometimes is if I'll divide, like I'll put some of the hair bananas on a group, or make them a subtool for like the hair in the front, and then a different one for the hair in the back. And for this character I had these hairs that are up top here, so they were kind of in their own group, so it's easier to adjust them, and that's kind of, it's just the general approach. I think setting up just the moving them around and shaping them overall. And that first step is probably the most important part. Once you've gotten that most of the way there, this, you know, the ladder, cleaning up, and these, you know, drawing the strands, that's really just kind of polish and just adding a little bit of a nicer look there. And so then for these guys, the fur trim, these were pretty tricky to figure out, but what I eventually ended up doing was basically painting a mask and extruding them from that. So let me just get a sphere real quick. Just a bit of sphere there. So let's say that I was doing this again for the sleeve. So what I wanted in this case was there's like a fur edge on this seam, and so it's smaller here. It's taller in the back or in the middle, and then it kind of fades back into the seam here. So I could just either fit a plane, or in this case I think a sphere would probably work pretty well, to have just a very general shape of that fur is going to follow. And then we will move back a little bit. That's something that you would adjust later on, obviously, anyway. And then get some mask. Oh, yeah, this is really low low topology resolution, so I'm just gonna diminish it real quick. Maybe that's too much, but you kind of want it a little bit on the higher side for this, because you're gonna be painting this, or well, masking it, and so you want, I think you want more rather than less. And don't do that. So it's kind of there. It's a bit much, but just so that I can know the general scope of what the fur should cover. What I actually ended up doing with my own sculpt is I actually just painted this. Because you notice that as I'm masking things, it keeps like blurring like that, and doing various things that I don't like. So I actually ended up painting it so that I had get this black. Oh. So that I could have more control. It's fixed. So say something like this, so that I could work out the shapes beforehand, and then once I had decided what those shapes would be, what I liked, then I masked them in. I'm just gonna go for the mask this time, I think. Maybe something like this. And then erase out the spikes. I just want to get something quick and dirty so I can demonstrate. So these are pretty hideous. But that's okay. The mask would be pretty, excuse me, the lasso masking would be nice here, except it also selects, it selects through the mesh. So unfortunately that doesn't work that well, or as well as I hoped. Because, you know, having the lasso would be nice because you can get a nice clean point to it. Get rid of that. And I'm going to pretend that this is serviceable. So then what I would do is extrude this. Excuse me, extract it. And I wanted to have a little bit of thickness, but not a lot. That's way too much. Maybe 0.2. There's still a lot to clean up. And for the cleanup, then I actually would use this because it doesn't matter. So I guess you could do kind of what I did and then just go in and draw your shapes like this with the reverse. That would work. I mostly just don't want those all the little dots of extra geo getting extracted. That would be annoying. See, like that thing up there. So just keep an eye out for those so that you don't have to deal with them later on. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. You can set thin border or not. What I will do is I actually like to, if I got good results smoothing the edge here. Now for extract, you can smooth the shape. If you click on this little circle here, it'll switch. So you'll see that right now it's filled in. So that'll smooth like the surface of it. You click that, it'll smooth out the edge of the extraction. So you'll notice that this is a little bit nicer. Now I lose the, my spikes there, but that's okay because that's actually, honestly, I've found that at least in ZBrushCore, that's something that I'm always kind of fighting. So it doesn't bother me that much, I guess. So I know it's gonna happen. If you wanted that geo to have like really nice, clean, pointy ends, then you can clean it up somewhere else. Okay, so I think that's good for now. I'm gonna extract it. Oop. Then forgot to hit accept. And then what I did is I went through and I pushed these edges in. Oh, I have back to my skull. Just to get a little bit tighter crease there. If you don't, I mean, I think it helps to sell the look a little more. You can also smooth that. Smooth the edges and then do that. And while this guy over here, smooth them into oblivion. And while you've got the mask like this, take advantage and clean up any pesky edges like this. This is looking real janky. It's not having it. Hopefully I can clean it up later. And just get yourself more closer to the shapes that you wanted, that maybe the extract didn't, kind of mushed for you, or maybe the masking was not being that helpful. Okay, I'm gonna leave that as is and remove that mask. Don't need the sphere anymore. So now you'll see that I've got kind of general shape. Let me get rid of the I'll just hide these guys so that they're not as much in the way. So you see I've got just a general shape for this. It's kind of fluff. I'm just gonna move some of these so that they're actually visible. I would clean this up. This is looking pretty bad. Or you could also just Dynamesh it, which I found for these, Dynameshing can be better or worse. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it didn't. I found that, because it wants to kind of mush all these things. So, but sometimes you just need more geo. And then the next step for this was just kind of puffing it out. And the same approach that I used for the hair could also be used for this. But at least for the concept art for this character, the hair was rendered kind of like a clumpy looking, so it didn't look as divided as like anime hair might look. It seemed more like a sheet or like a layer of fur. So I didn't, I tried that and I just didn't really care for that look. And backface mask strikes again. Every single time I work on a sculpt, I forget to turn on thin layers like this and it bites me. So undo all of that. Okay. Turn on, make sure you're doing whatever. And then so what I was doing is just kind of, I would just pick out like the center of this clump fur, which in my mind, these are kind of going like this. So it's originating from this edge. So I just want to think of the flow of this fur. So out from here into the tip, I just have like an S shape. It can be a C shape as well. So this is kind of how I'm thinking of these pieces of fur. And just thinking about, just kind of draw that with the clay buildup or whatever tool you like to use. The cracks or damn standard is also good for this if you're using it inverse. I find that I get pretty good control with, there you see, dang backface masking. I find that I get pretty good control with the clay, so I tend to favor that one. And then just kind of, just kind of build up. I have found that it is a lot easier to keep in control of the shape you're getting when you're adding volume to it, as opposed to trying to subtract. Because one of the attempts that I made at this, like getting this fur, was actually getting like a fatter extract and then kind of flattening the points. But I just found that it very quickly just got very blobby, and it was very difficult to control the form. So I ended up liking this a lot better. So you see that even just by kind of puffing up that piece, it already is starting to look like cartoony sort of fur. This approach may or may not work if you're trying to do like more realistic fur, but I think it probably still would. You would just have to, I think you would just need to get a lot of smaller pieces, a lot of smaller spikes here. So that might be tricky, but I think you would still probably get a pretty good look out of this technique, or this way of thinking of it. And I'm sure this is also applicable for other softwares that let you sculpt. If you can't do the extraction method, then I'm not sure. But I try to keep this as vanilla as I can. So you'll see that we're already getting something that kind of looks like it. Then the next step that I would do here is with the cracks or the damn standard brush is turn on backface masking. Always. Because that's, to me, that's just like the curse of ZBrush. The thing is always off, and I always regret it. And then just work the brush in between the clumps of fur there. Maybe a little too much. Just so that you end up with kind of selling more the fact that these are they're together, but they're kind of flowing a little separately. And then you can also work in some some strands like we were doing with the hair. Depending on how stylized you're going to want this, then I would also go in with polish and just tighten up those creases. That can look pretty nice if it's the look that you're going for. Something like this. And at this point, I would probably increase my Dynamesh resolution and Dynamesh this again. Starting to get kind of blocky. I was going to say pixelated, but that's not quite correct. And then depending on the visibility, you're going to want to do the same thing for the other side. So again, just kind of build up the form in the direction that this fur is going out. Also, you can, if you're a little rougher with those strokes, then what you can do is you can get some nice organic sort of valleys in here. So if I just smooth this real quick, you'll notice that I still have some depressed shapes here, and you can use those to just kind of build a little more form into it. Like so. And those can end up looking pretty nice. And then you can polish this if you want with the H polish. You can also tighten these corners if you're going for a stylistic. You can do one of these and then polish, and then that would get you a nice tight crease to that form there. So that can look pretty nice. If you're doing, if you want it to be like really stylized, then you can also go with the cracks brush, inverse, and just do one of these. And maybe that was a little too big, something like that maybe. And then just gonna start. So now I've got a nice mountain. And then with H polish, I'm just gonna inverse this and then just kind of fill it in. You can also fill in those spaces with clay. With a buildup. And then polish. So you're going to end up with kind of like an extruded triangle or prism almost. I think I ended up doing that for some of the pieces and not for others. And that gave me a nice look too. I find that kind of wants to look more like a feather almost, which maybe that's something that you're going for. So maybe that can be useful. And then in my case, what I did, just like these. Was I just basically repeated that. I made this piece first, and then I just painted a mask out on this, like that, you know, but good, and extruded that out, moved it out a little bit, and then basically did the same thing that I had done with the main piece for these. For these smaller fluffs here, just to give it a little more texture. And the same with these. For this lower layer, I actually just duplicated this and duplicated this subtool and adjusted a little bit, shrank it down, and rotated a little bit. And then I also extracted these out of the main piece here, just to give it a little more layering, so it didn't look like it was just so that it looks a little bit more more varied, more like fur, and less like, you know, like those little pieces of plastic grass that you get with your sushi. And that's basically how I did this for this particular sculpt. So hopefully that is helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye.